You open your eyes in complete darkness. The fire has collapsed into a circle of red embers. Someone is breathing beside you, an insect scratches inside the grass, and somewhere beyond the camp a branch snaps. What do you do when sleep refuses to return? Today, about 1 adult in 10 meets the criteria for an insomnia disorder, while many more experience occasional symptoms. Insomnia is not simply being awake. It means repeated difficulty sleeping that brings distress or problems during the day. Your ancestors could wake at night too, but they did not necessarily interpret every wakeful moment as evidence that something was wrong. They had no clock to consult, no glowing screen, no alarm announcing how badly tomorrow would go. But that does not mean prehistoric sleep was perfect. The first mistake is imagining that ancient humans fell asleep at sunset and remained unconscious until sunrise. In 2015, Gandhi Yetish, Jerome Siegel, and their colleagues measured sleep among the Hadza of Tanzania, the San of Namibia, and the Tsimane of Bolivia. These are different pre-industrial societies living without electric lighting and many features of modern urban life. The researchers used small activity monitors to estimate when people slept. This method is called actigraphy, which means using body movement to track likely periods of sleep and wakefulness. Across the three groups, actual sleep averaged roughly 5.7 to 7.1 hours. People usually did not fall asleep at sunset. On average, sleep began more than 3 hours later. So what filled those dark hours? Part of the answer was fire. A controlled fire extended the social day beyond the reach of sunlight. It created a warm island inside the night, pushed some animals and insects away, illuminated familiar faces, and gave your mind something to watch as the flames changed shape. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner studied conversations among the Jew Hoansi of southern Africa. Her 2014 research found that daytime talk often focused on practical work, complaints, and social rules. Firelight changed the conversation. At night, stories, distant people, spirits, memories, and relationships became more prominent. The darkness did not simply switch society off, it changed what society was for. If you were not sleepy yet, you could listen. You could repair a damaged relationship through conversation. You could learn why a certain animal behaved strangely, how an ancestor survived a drought, or which family beyond the horizon could be trusted. Was that entertainment? Yes. But it was also a library without books. Stories carried maps, warnings, identities, obligations, and explanations from one mind to another. A child lying near the fire could absorb information without being formally taught. An adult who could not sleep might hear a story that changed tomorrow's decisions. Wakefulness had social value. Then the fire became quieter. The temperature fell. Your body became ready for sleep. The study led by Yetish found that environmental temperature was closely connected to sleep timing. People tended to fall asleep as the night cooled and wake near the coldest part of the daily cycle. Light mattered, but darkness alone did not command sleep immediately. Your ancestors were not biological machines switched off by sunset. They waited, they talked. They allowed the evening to cool their bodies and slow the camp. Where did they lie down? The archaeological record offers a rare answer because plants usually decay before archaeologists can find them. At Border Cave in South Africa, Lynn Wadley and her colleagues reported grass bedding at least 200,000 years old. Bundles of broad-leafed grass were placed near the back of the cave, often over ash left from earlier fires or burned bedding. Ash was more than dirt. It could create a cleaner surface and may have discouraged crawling insects. Burning old bedding could also remove waste and pests. Your sleeping place was not permanent furniture. It was something maintained, replaced, and sometimes destroyed. At Sibudu Rock Shelter, also in South Africa, Wadley and her colleagues found plant bedding dating to about 77,000 years ago. The bedding included aromatic leaves from a plant with chemicals that can repel insects and kill larvae. Your ancestors were not merely dropping onto bare stone. They were engineering the night. They selected plants, they layered surfaces, they managed smoke, ash, insects, and comfort with materials that rarely survive long enough to tell their story. Yet even a carefully built bed did not make sleep safe. Sleep is a dangerous biological bargain. Your muscles relax, your attention turns inward, your response to the outside world becomes slower, even though predators, hostile people, fire, weather, and falling branches remain active. How could an entire group accept that vulnerability at once? Perhaps it did not. In 2017, David Sampson, Alyssa Crittenden, and their colleagues measured nighttime activity among Hadza hunter-gatherers. Over 20 days of observation, which every person in the study was simultaneously scored as asleep for only 18 minutes in total. Think about that. Across nearly 3 weeks of nights, the whole group appeared asleep at the same time for less than the length of a television episode. During 99.8% of the sampled nighttime periods, at least one person was awake or in a light stage of sleep. No guard schedule was required. Different bodies naturally preferred different times. This preference is called a chronotype, meaning the tendency to be more alert earlier or later in the day. Younger and older people often had different sleep timing. When several generations slept together, those differences spread wakefulness across the night. One person stirred early. Another remained awake late. A child moved, an elder listened. The result resembled a living alarm system. This does not prove that every prehistoric camp always had a conscious sentinel watching for lions. The Hadza are modern people, not preserved fossils, and no living society is an exact copy of the Stone Age. But the study reveals a human pattern that could have been valuable across thousands of generations. Being awake while others slept was not necessarily a defect. It could protect the group. What might you actually do during that wakeful period? You might tend the fire if the embers were fading. You might listen for the repeated sound that separates a harmless animal from an approaching threat. You might check a child, adjust your grass bedding, move closer to warmth, or whisper to another person who is also awake. You might simply rest. Rest is not identical to sleep, but it is not nothing. Your body can remain still while your attention drifts. Without a clock measuring every minute, wakefulness does not automatically become a countdown toward disaster. Would fear still keep you awake? Of course, a predator call, an unfamiliar smell, a sick child, conflict inside the group, hunger, cold, pain, or an approaching storm could make sleep difficult. Ancient humans carried grief and anxiety inside nervous systems built from the same basic biology as yours. Natural life did not erase insomnia. It produced many reasons for vigilance. The environment also shaped the quality of sleep. Samson and Crittenden studied how Hadza grass huts, sound, and fire affected sleeping conditions. The huts reduced variation in thermal stress during the rainy season, creating a more stable microenvironment, which simply means a small local space with different conditions from the world outside. Sound mattered too. Louder nights were associated with less sleep. Fire was not a magical sleeping pill either. It could warm the body on a cold night, but too much heat, smoke, or conversation could delay sleep. A shelter could reduce wind and rain, yet it could also trap insects, odor, and the movement of other people. Comfort always involved trade-offs. The safest place might not be the quietest place. Sleeping close to others increased noise, but it also placed help within arm's reach. Sleeping near the fire brought warmth and light, but demanded occasional attention when sparks rose or fuel collapsed, which mattered more, silence or safety. The answer changed with season, weather, age, illness, and danger. Sleep was not one fixed ritual repeated perfectly every night. It was a flexible behavior negotiated with the environment. A prehistoric night was not silent. People coughed, babies cried, wood cracked, insects buzzed, animals called. Wind moved through shelters and branches. The romantic image of perfect ancestral sleep collapses quickly. Your ancestors may have slept fewer hours than expected. They may have awakened repeatedly. They may have shared cramped spaces with children, elders, smoke, insects, and noise. So why did a wakeful night feel different? The answer may be expectation. You do not suffer only from being awake. You can also suffer from believing that wakefulness is destroying the next day. A clock turns uncertainty into arithmetic. 6 hours remain, then 5, then 4. Each calculation makes the night feel more urgent. Your ancestors had future worries, but they did not watch digital numbers prove that sleep was failing. Their night also contained useful actions. The fire needed attention. Another person might welcome quiet company. A story could continue. Danger could be checked and dismissed. Wakefulness had somewhere to go. Reconstruct one night about 70,000 years ago. You sit near the back of a South African rock shelter. Grass bedding covers part of the floor. Aromatic leaves release a sharp smell when someone shifts their weight. The remains of an older bedding layer lie as ash beneath part of the sleeping area. Outside, the last light disappears. The fire illuminates faces, but not the cave beyond them. Food has been shared. Stone points lie near a wall. An older adult begins a story about a journey to a place you have never seen. You are tired, but you do not sleep yet. The story carries you beyond the cave. Hours later, the air has cooled. Conversations shrink into fragments. People move toward the bedding, children settle close to adults, and the fire becomes a low orange pulse. You fall asleep, then a sound wakes you. No one screams. The sound comes again, farther away. Another person near the fire is already sitting upright. You listen together, the danger does not approach. You push a piece of wood into the embers, watch a small flame rise, and lie down again. Sleep returns. When it returns, was that a ruined night? From a modern bedroom, it might appear fragmented and inefficient. From inside the shelter, it was a functioning night. The group rested, the fire survived, a possible threat was checked, and someone remained responsive while others slept. This is the counterintuitive reversal. Ancient humans did not always defeat sleeplessness. They used it. A person awake at the edge of the group could become a listener, a storyteller, a caregiver, a firekeeper, or an accidental guard. Variation that frustrates a modern household may once have made a mixed-age camp more secure. That does not mean chronic insomnia is harmless. Disordered sleep difficulty can damage health, mood, attention, and daily functioning, and it deserves real treatment rather than romantic stories about caves. The ancient lesson is smaller and more useful. Every awakening is not a catastrophe. Every night does not need to look identical. Your body was shaped inside groups where sleep was flexible, social, seasonal, and never completely separated from the environment. Tonight, you may open your eyes in darkness. The room will be quiet. The clock may be waiting. Your mind may begin counting what remains, but the wakefulness itself is older than the clock. For your ancestors, opening their eyes at night did not always mean sleep had failed. Sometimes it meant someone was still keeping the fire alive.